in a way, globalization itself that has reinforced a certain kind of Western cultural hegemony. I'm Ross Douthat, your host for the Film and Culture series at the Athenaeum Center for Thought and Culture. What's happened under conditions of globalization in the last 20 years is not that Americans are watching, sort of sophisticated Swedish dramas and South Africans are watching the best of Russian cinema. It's not some sort of large-scale cultural exchange that has sort of pushed America as America off its pedestal. Instead, it is the globalization of a sort of lowest common denominator form of American entertainment, right? So nothing is more American in certain ways than comic book movies. So when you get, a global marketplace that rewards selling comic book movies, you are ratifying American hegemony, but the most sort of superficial, lowest common denominator form of American culture. So I would be very happy to live in a world where globalization meant, more exposure to a vast diversity of culturally specific forms of cinema. And to be clear, that does happen to some extent, right? The South Korean movie Parasite won Best Picture a couple years ago, and so a lot more people were exposed to one of the best directors in South Korea than would have been the case otherwise. The Bollywood spectacular, the Indian movie RRR, found an audience in America recently, right? Like these things do happen. Forms of cultural exchange do happen. I've watched various European movies that maybe I wouldn't have watched 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, you had a sort of thriving, small but substantial art house audience for foreign movies. It wasn't the case that before the current era of globalization, Americans were never exposed to foreign movies. And the dominant commercial trend of the period of globalization that starts with the end of the Cold War, really, is just towards American blockbusters becoming global juggernauts at the expense of both local cinema and what was the best of American cinema prior to that era. We aren't exporting the greatest American cinema of the 1970s. We're exporting the Avengers. I don't think it's a sort of jingoistic perspective to wish that it was otherwise. People are being trained against sort of sustained, in-depth interactions where you're shutting out distraction and shutting out other influences.